Khloe Vance stood in the middle of the living room, her makeup flawless, her voice cold as ice. Yet a triumphant smirk curved her lips. I froze for a beat, saying nothing. "Don't play dumb," she said, folding her arms, her eyes dripping with contempt. "You know this marriage has been a sham for years. I'm done settling." I looked down, my expression hardening, though a faint flicker of sadness passed through my eyes. "Khloe, why all of a sudden?" "Don't call me Khloe," she snapped. "You don't have that right." She twisted her wedding ring off her finger and tossed it onto the glass coffee table with a sharp clink. "The one that got away, he's back. I'm going back to him." I stood rooted to the spot, my voice low. "Is it Leo Foster?" "That's right." Khloe's brow arched, her look pure victory. "You can't even begin to compare to him. He's the one I've always wanted. You're just a useless husband. I've been supporting a man who doesn't even own a decent suit. Why should I waste any more of my time on you?" I clenched my jaw, pretending to be devastated. "I won't sign." "Khloe, I can't lose you." She laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Then she pulled a check from her designer handbag and slapped it down in front of me. "This is your severance package. $1 million. Sign the papers and get out. You should be thanking me." I stared at the check, my face a mask of shock. My fingertips trembled and my eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "All right," I said, my voice heavy as if crushed by the weight of it all. "I'll sign." She rolled her eyes. "Should have just done that from the start. So pathetic." She turned and walked into the bedroom to pack. I kept staring at the check. Slowly, the corner of my mouth curled into a smile. This marriage was finally over. I'd been playing a part for far too long. It was time to step off the stage. 2 hours later, we stood on the courthouse steps. The sun beat down relentlessly. Next to me, Khloe clutched the signed divorce papers, her face tight with impatience. I kept my head low, my shoulders shaking as I played the broken man abandoned by fate. "Are you done crying yet?" she asked, irritated. "Don't embarrass me out here." I sniffled. "Goodbye, Khloe. Don't ever contact me again," she said, turning sharply and stalking toward the parking lot without a glance back. I took a moment to compose myself, then followed, my face now unreadable. Just then, a silver Audi pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and a man in a crisp white shirt stepped out. He was handsome, sharp-eyed, confident. He stretched out his arms to Khloe. "Khloe, Leo, a..." Light ignited in Khloe's eyes. She rushed forward and threw her arms around him. "I'm back." I narrowed my eyes. "Well, what do you know? The old flame returns, and the villain gets her wish." I walked straight up to them. Before they could react, I grabbed Leo's hand and shook it firmly. "Buddy, I can't thank you enough." Leo froze. What did you say?" I beamed, a picture of pure relief. "You're taking her off my hands. I'm finally free, man. I owe you a beer for this." Khloe's face twisted in disbelief. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I raised my hands, my tone light. "Nothing's wrong. I'm thrilled. You said you were escaping a nightmare, right? Well, turns out I'm the one who just got out of prison." A flicker of panic crossed her face. This wasn't the reaction she'd imagined. She had pictured me begging, clinging to her like a lost puppy even after the papers were signed. But the smile on my face was brighter than the midday sun. Leo awkwardly pulled his hand away, whispering to her, "Is he having a breakdown?" I laughed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Don't worry about me. I've never been better. I wish you to the best, though. Honestly, with this combination, you're going to need it." "Julian," Khloe hissed, her voice sharp with fury. I looked at her, my gaze no longer filled with quiet suffering but with calm, chilling indifference. "Khloe, you always wanted to see me leave, didn't you? Now you have your wish. Except..." I paused, a smirk playing on my lips. "You're going to regret this." Her mouth opened, but before she could speak, I turned my back on them and walked away without a glance. My phone buzzed. I answered, my tone flat. "It's done. Time to come back." A respectful voice responded. "Yes, sir." I let out a soft chuckle, squinting at the horizon. The wind was strong, the sun hot, but for the first time in years, I knew I was finally free. "Is he out of his mind?" Khloe muttered, gripping Leo's arm as she glared at my retreating figure, grinding her teeth. Leo frowned. He seemed different. My ass," she sneered. "He's a pathetic loser. What's he going to do now that I've divorced him? Suddenly become a king?" Leo didn't answer. He just watched my back with a thoughtful expression. For some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that my calm gaze meant I had known exactly how this would all play out. Khloe scoffed, looping her arm through his. Forget him. He's a nobody trying to get a rise out of us. We can finally be together now. Leo nodded, flashing a practiced smile, though doubt lingered in his eyes. The first day after the divorce, I woke early, went through my morning routine, and walked out of the house that was once ours. The morning breeze against my face felt like freedom. I slid into the back of a car where a man in a sharp suit waited. He nodded respectfully. Mr. Shaw, Zenith Tower? Yes, sir. 10 minutes later, the black Mercedes-Benz pulled smoothly in front of Zenith Group headquarters. I stepped through the glass doors. Every employee in the lobby rose in unison. Good morning, Mr. Shaw, they chorused. I gave a slight nod and walked to my private elevator, my face impassive. The Zenith Group, one of the titans of Port Sterling, with interests in finance, technology, and real estate. And I was the man secretly pulling all the strings. I had chosen to disappear to marry into the Vance family, to live as a dependent, all to honor a deathbed promise to my father, to watch Vance Enterprises from the inside. For 3 years, I endured humiliation, playing the fool, waiting for the right moment. And now she had let me go herself. It was finally time to take off the mask. The elevator shot to the top floor. My assistant, Will, was waiting with a report. Mr. Shaw, 3 firms are requesting meetings to discuss partnerships. Also, Vance Enterprises is showing signs of a cash flow crisis. Several key shareholders backing them are beginning to pull their investments. A small smile touched my lips. Keep up the pressure. Don't crush them too quickly. I want to see how long it takes before she comes begging. Understood. Meanwhile, Khloe had just woken to a frantic call from her secretary. Miss Vance, it's a disaster. True Source Capital just pulled all their funding, and 3 key members of the project team walked out with them. What? Khloe was instantly alert. We just signed a long-term contract. They cited an internal strategy shift. They said they no longer see our project as viable. Khloe's face went pale with fury. She immediately called the investment head at True Source. His voice was cold. I'm sorry, Miss Vance. The market is what it is. Then he hung up on her. Khloe hurled her phone across the room in a fit of rage. Are they insane? Are they trying to ruin my company just because I got a divorce? The first person who came to mind was Julian.no. Impossible. He was a spineless house husband who couldn't even handle a business dinner. How could he possibly influence powerful capital firms? But then she remembered my last words at the courthouse. You're going to regret this. A chill ran up her spine. That evening, she stood by her floor-to-ceiling window, staring into the night when Leo's voice came from behind her. You had a long day. Come and relax. Khloe turned to him. Her eyes were filled with frustration. Didn't you say you had a big project you were working on? Weren't you about to close a new round of funding? That's the plan, Leo said, sinking into the sofa and rubbing his temples. But a few of my investors suddenly got cold feet. The market dynamics have shifted. Khloe's heart skipped a beat. They pulled out too. They hadn't committed yet, but the term sheets we'd agreed on were suddenly canceled. Her anxiety rose, and she snapped. I thought you were supposed to be so brilliant. You were top of your class. Everyone loved you. You had all the answers. Didn't you say you could handle anything? Leo's pride was wounded. His face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? Are you blaming me? I'm not. Yes, you are. Leo cut her off, standing up. Khloe, I came back to build a future with you, not to be your scapegoat. Khloe froze, wanting to explain, but Leo had already stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. Suddenly, she remembered. For 3 years, Julian had endured her cold shoulders and harsh words. No matter what she said, he would just quietly absorb it. He'd bring her food when she worked late, run to the pharmacy in the middle of the night when she was sick, and sit with her in silence while she cried, letting her vent every frustration. But now that man was gone. She picked up her phone and opened Instagram. A news notification popped onto her screen. Zenith Group Chairman Julian Shaw has confirmed his return to full-time management of the company. Her mind went blank. Her breathing stopped. Zenith, the conglomerate she had once pulled every string she had to get a meeting with, only to be flatly denied. She stared at the familiar name on the screen, her body rigid. Julian Shaw. He wasn't a loser. He never was. In that instant, she realized she might have just made the biggest mistake of her life. I sat in my penthouse office, the city lights glittering below as I swirled red wine in my glass. My assistant knocked, stepped inside, and smiled. Khloe Vance has started calling our old network of shareholders, trying to pull some strings to renegotiate the deals. I smiled faintly. Tell them, sure, she can come see me. Do you want her on her knees? Not yet, I added, downing the wine in one gulp, my eyes sharp. Let her first fully understand the meaning of you reap what you sow. Khloe was in full-blown panic. In just 2 days, her company had been hit by a tidal wave of withdrawn investments and canceled projects. Even her most loyal vice president was secretly contacting shareholders, looking for an exit strategy. For the first time, she felt like she was standing on a crumbling cliff with no one willing to catch her. And it all started the day after she divorced Julian. Refusing to believe it, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She hailed a taxi to the office of a partner firm, assuming her old connections would smooth things over, but the moment she explained her purpose, the executive gave her a distant, polite smile. Miss Vance, it's not that we don't want to give you a chance. It's just that the power behind your family is a bit thin. What do you mean? She asked, frowning. The man simply handed her a list.at. The top, printed in bold, were 2 words, Zenith Group. These 4 companies were recently acquired by Zenith, he explained. All project approvals have been transferred to Julian Shah's desk. Khloe froze. She looked down at the name on the list, and the world started to go dark around the edges. She finally understood the crisis at her company wasn't because of a mistake in her strategy. From the very beginning, an invisible hand had been closing a net around her, and that hand once belonged to the man who had lived in her house, cooked in her kitchen, slept in her bedroom, the man she had dismissed as a pathetic loser. A mix of disbelief and fear rose inside her. Back in her office, she sought out Leo. You should try to contact Julian, she said carefully, forcing her expression calm. Leo, scrolling through his phone on the sofa, looked up. Are you crazy? Why would I contact him? Khloe forced a smile. You're old acquaintances, after all. Maybe he'd be willing to help us out. Didn't you say he was a good-for-nothing? Leo set his phone down, his gaze complicated. You used to look down on him, and now you want to use him? Her face flushed. Her eyes darted away. That's not what I meant. I was just saying, he is your buddy, right? Leo caught the sarcasm laced in her voice, and his expression soured. In truth, he had felt something was off for a while now. At the courthouse, Julian's bizarrely cheerful line, buddy, I can't thank you enough, had made his skin crawl. What kind of man smiles at his rival on the day of his divorce? Looking back, it hadn't been a breakdown. It was calculated, a move in a game Leo hadn't even known he was playing. If you want to contact him, you do it yourself, Leo said, rising to leave. I'm not about to go groveling to him. Khloe opened her mouth but found no words. She sat alone in her vast, empty office, struck by a profound sense of loneliness. As useless as she thought Julian was, he used to call her every day to ask if she was hungry or tired. When she worked late, he'd show up with hot takeout. When she was nervous before a big meeting, he'd be waiting by the elevator with a bottle of water. At the time, she had taken it all for granted, even found his concern annoying and cheap. But now, with everyone gone and even Leo growing cold, she realized how much she missed the feeling of being cared for. She tried calling Julian's old number, but a recorded message told her it was no longer in service. Driven by desperation, she went to Zenith Tower. The receptionist stopped her at the front desk. Khloe handed over her business card with a practiced, humble smile. Could you please let Julian Shah know that I'm here to see him? Tell him it's Khloe Vance. The receptionist smiled politely. Hello, Miss Vance. Mr. Shah is not taking any personal appointments today. Khloe stiffened, her voice rising. I'm his ex-wife. I'm sorry, the receptionist replied smoothly, her smile unwavering. Mr. Shah's instructions were clear, especially not his ex-wife. Khloe's face went white. After a few seconds of stunned silence, she turned and fled. Feeling like a complete failure, that night she returned home, her emotions stretched to breaking. By 9 o'clock, she couldn't resist any longer. She drove to Julian's old place, a modest apartment she had once despised, but it was empty. A neighbor told her, "Oh, Mr. Shah, he moved out a while ago. Said his circumstances had changed and he needed a new place. I hear he's living in one of those mansions in the South Hills now. Has 3 different cars." Khloe's eye twitched. Something unidentifiable churned in her stomach. Sitting in the back of the car on her way home, her mind was chaos. She muttered to herself, who is he? Was I really that wrong about him? The city lights blurred past the window, but her world was fading to black. She had once thought she'd discarded a useless man. Now she knew she had thrown away a gold mine, and the cruelest irony, the gold mine had tried again and again to warm her cold world. She had simply never deemed him worthy of her attention. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "Ma'am, should I take you straight home?" Khloe closed her eyes, her voice heavy with fatigue. "No, take me to the South Hills, to the Villa District." She wasn't ready to give up. She needed to ask him face to face. "Julian, were you lying to me this whole time? Did you ever even take me seriously?" Even though deep down, she already knew the answer. The Villa District in the South Hills was a world of manicured lawns and quiet luxury, each mansion radiating an aura of elite, untouchable wealth. Khloe stood before the gates of Julian's new home, staring at the black Maybach parked in the driveway. 3 years ago, she had sneered at that car, calling it too corporate. Now, its presence felt suffocating. A security guard stopped her at the gate. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" I'm a friend of Julian Shaw's." The guard offered a polite, impenetrable smile. "Mr. Shaw isn't seeing any friends today." Khloe gritted her teeth. "Tell him Khloe Vance is here. I used to be his ex-wife." The guard interrupted, tone still courteous but firm. "Then you're definitely not getting in." Her face turned ashen. All she could do was stand there, watching the warm lights flicker inside the mansion. Khloe stood in front of Julian's mansion, realizing with a hollow ache that she would never again reach the man who had once fixed her leaky faucets and eaten instant ramen with her. The man who had silently carried her burdens, whose front door she used to walk through without hesitation. She no longer had the right to even approach it. Defeated, she turned and left. When she got home, Leo was waiting on the sofa, his face thunderous. "Where have you been?" His voice was sharp. "Meeting with a client." She lied as she kicked off her heels. Her feet ached. "Were you with Julian?" His eyes pinned her in place. Khloe stiffened. Her tone turned cold. "Do I need to report my whereabouts to you now?" Leo shot up from the sofa, his voice dropping to a frigid whisper. "Khloe, do you not understand what our relationship is? I'm not your obedient little lapdog." Her glare met his. "What's that supposed to mean? You think you can still act so high and mighty?" He sneered. "You're divorced. Your company is about to go under, and I'm the one out there trying to manage your debts. How dare you run off to see another man?" Khloe's face twisted in anger. "I went to see him for the company. I was wrong to ever think you could handle this." With a crash, Leo swept a cup off the table. "You better not regret the choice you made." "I already do." Her voice was ice. "If I could go back in time, I never would have let you take Julian's place." The air between them crackled with tension, a breath away from shattering into violence. Khloe grabbed her bag, stormed into the bedroom, and slammed the door. The moment it clicked shut, her strength collapsed. She slid down against the door, buried her face in her hands, and let the tears flow. This wasn't love. It was a delusion. She had thought Leo was her ideal, her ticket to freedom, a worthy replacement. But he was nothing more than a superficial, arrogant opportunist. And the man who had truly stood by her for 3 years, she had been the one to push him away. Julian had never spoken of love, but he had shielded her from every storm. From fixing the plumbing to saving her company, from buying her breakfast to waiting in the car for her on late nights, he had been there, silent and steadfast. She had been the one to crush that steady love beneath her heel. On impulse, she opened her photo gallery. Buried deep was a picture she had forgotten. A winter years ago, she had been sick in bed, and Julian had quietly made her ginger tea. Not wanting to wake her, he had left it on the nightstand and sent her a photo with a short message. "Drink this when you wake up." The photo showed a steaming mug, with his strong, long-fingered hand resting beside it. Back then, she had scorned that hand as rough and unrefined. Now, staring at it, her eyes filled with tears. Meanwhile, in my villa, I sat in the study, reviewing the day's financial reports. My assistant entered with an update. "Leo Foster's 2 investment projects have completely collapsed. His funding has dried up. He's barely afloat with cash infusions from what's left of Vance Enterprises. He's still out there claiming he's about to close an $80 million round, but no one in the industry will even take his calls anymore." I nodded, my tone indifferent. "Keep squeezing. Squeeze him until the only person he has left is Khloe." My assistant hesitated. "Khloe Vance was here tonight." I let out a dry laugh. "I know. You're not going to see her. Why would I?" I looked out at the glittering city. My voice dropped low. She thought she was powered by love. The truth is, she was powered by my refusal to call her out on her lies. Now I'm calling her out. I set my phone on the desk. The lock screen was still the photo from the day of the divorce. The sun had been bright. Khloe and I stood outside the courthouse. And on the other side of the frame, I had been shaking Leo's hand with a smile like a death row inmate who had just been pardoned. From that day on, my decision was set. I would give her the freedom she wanted, and I would take back the dignity she had never appreciated. Late that night, Khloe stood on her balcony, lighting a cigarette. The wind made her cough. Inside, Leo lay on the sofa, pretending to sleep, though his eyes were wide open. A cold dread crept into his heart. It was clear now. Khloe didn't want him. She wanted a replacement, a fantasy. And that fantasy was falling apart. Their relationship had never been love. It was a transaction, a mutual arrangement of use that had burned away their dignity along with everything else. Khloe stubbed out her cigarette, her voice barely a whisper. Julian, I finally understand. You weren't weak. You just couldn't be bothered to take me seriously. You really never loved me at all. Leo Foster was on the verge of breaking. Word of his fundraising attempts spread, and one rejection followed another. He had assumed that with his connections, his intellect, and Khloe's backing, he would rise to prominence. Instead, every investor laughed him off or shut him down with the same cutting line. Sorry, we don't invest in anyone going up against Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw, again and again, the man Leo had once dismissed as a pathetic loser. The man who had smiled outside the courthouse and said thank you. The more Leo thought about it, the more he refused to accept it. He clutched his meticulously prepared proposal and forced his way into Zenith Group's public investment conference. The venue was dazzling, filled with Port Sterling's most powerful investors and elites. Leo stood in the corner, wearing a borrowed designer suit from Khloe's closet, trying to mask his desperation. Most people took one look at him and steered away as if he carried a plague. As the event neared its end, the massive screen lit up. The host's voice boomed with excitement. And now, let's welcome the lead partner for this initiative, the chairman of Zenith Group, Mr. Julian Shaw. Thunderous applause shook the room. Leo felt struck by lightning. The color drained from his face. His project proposal slipped from his trembling hand, papers scattering across the floor. Julian, the man who had once cleaned toilets in Khloe's house, who had once poured tea for Leo himself, was now the chairman of Zenith Group. A man who could move billions with a phone call. A man who controlled half the business landscape of Port Sterling. Julian strode out in a dark gray suit, confident, serene, eyes sharp as knives. When his gaze swept across the crowd and landed on Leo, Leo froze. His body remembered the courthouse, that smiling fool. Only now the fool was a predator showing his fangs. When the presentation ended, the room gave a standing ovation. Investors swarmed Julian, pressing business cards into his hand, eager for a word. Leo, drenched in cold sweat, shrank against the wall. He wanted to run, but Julian walked toward him slowly, deliberately. Leo, Julian's voice was calm, unnervingly calm. And Mr. Shaw. Leo's mouth twitched as he forced out the words, offering a stiff handshake. Today has been quite a surprise. Julian ignored the hand. He slipped his hands into his pockets, standing before him. I remember something you said once. Leo stared confused. You said sooner or later you were going to replace me, Julian recalled. And looking at it now, you did. You took my place. The only thing is, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the apartment you live in, they were all paid for by me. You thought you won when you got Khloe. Sorry, her success wasn't built on love. It was built on my generosity. Leo's face burned crimson. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Julian's voice remained conversational, almost casual. That suit you're wearing, it's the Armani she took from the house, isn't it? I had it custom made. Never even got the chance to wear it. That MacBook you use? I bought it for our 3rd anniversary. She shoved it in a closet without opening the box. And the apartment you're living in now? I paid for it in cash. The deed is in her name. She said she was free, but the truth is I was the one who let her go. Leo stood frozen, utterly stunned. The truth crashed down on him with brutal clarity. He had thought he was a king, thought he had won, but now he realized the foundation he stood on was never his. It was gold that Julian had left behind. He hadn't claimed victory. He was only standing in the place of a man who no longer cared. To stay, his teeth clenched, fury and shame twisting his face as he stepped closer, hissing through gritted teeth. Why? Why are you telling me this? Julian's eyes narrowed, his tone dropping into ice. Because I want you to know that every inch of ground you stand on today is ground I couldn't be bothered to occupy anymore. You didn't win. You're just holding on to what I threw away. You picked up my trash. Leo's face went pale. His knees felt weak, and he swayed slightly under the weight of the words. Just then, Julian gave the slightest flick of his hand. His assistant stepped forward immediately, carrying a thick file, and handed several bound copies to Leo. These, Julian said coolly, are the complete records of Khloe using my personal accounts to fund Vance enterprises during our marriage. Take them back to her. Leo's jaw dropped. You're going to sue her? Julian's smile was razor-sharp and merciless. No, I just want her to understand that her success was never hers. From the very day she met me, even her confidence was a gift from me. And now, I'm taking it back. With that, Julian turned and walked away, leaving Leo standing alone. Leo's body felt cold, his head spinning. The truth was suffocating. His so-called comeback, his victory, his triumph, it had never been his. It was nothing but a carefully crafted trap. And he wasn't just a fool. He was the punchline of the joke. When he got home, he slammed the documents onto the table in front of Khloe, sneering. Why don't you tell me just how much of his money you really spent? Khloe's hands trembled as she opened the file. Page after page, line after line, she saw her own signature on contracts, authorizations, transfer records, things she thought he'd never bother to notice. The papers slipped from her hands, scattering across the floor. Her face turned deathly pale. In that moment, it struck her like lightning. Julian wasn't just the husband she had lost, he was the entire life she had thrown away. Late that night, Khloe sat by the window, untouched glass of red wine at her side. The documents Julian had returned were still scattered across the coffee table. Every record, every number, every signature was a thorn stabbing her pride, nailing her to a pillar of shame. She had never imagined that the husband she mocked as a loser had, for 3 years, been quietly wrapping her entire company around his little finger. Her independence, her identity as a powerful businesswoman, it had all been a carefully constructed illusion, propped up by a man who had silently carried her losses. Now that the veil was ripped away, she saw it with brutal clarity. Her confidence, her success, her very sense of self had all been lies. And the true victor had already walked away without even a backward glance. She lifted the glass, her eyes glinting with determination. This couldn't be the end. She had lost too much already. She couldn't lose Julian as well. Her phone trembled in her hands as she pulled up his contact. The profile picture had changed. Once blank, now it showed the silhouette of a man standing alone under a street lamp, nursing a drink, distant, cold, unreachable. After a long pause, she hit the call button. It rang before a voice finally came. Hello, Julian's voice was deep, flat, emotionless. Julian, her own voice shook. Can we meet? What do you want? His tone was sharp, cutting. She bit her lip, softening her voice. I want to start over with you. Silence hung for a beat before he let out a low, humorless laugh. You want to start over, or you want me to bail you out? That's not what I mean, she tried to protest. I know exactly what you mean. Julian cut her off, his voice like a blade. You've lost everything, and now you realize I was your only lifeline. So you come crawling back. What do you think I am? A backup plan? A stepping stone? Khloe's eyes filled with tears. Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. I know I was wrong. I didn't see you for who you really were. And what if you had? Julian shot back coldly. You think I'd still give you another chance? Do you have any idea what the last 3 years were like for me? Every time you screamed at me, every time you looked at me with disgust, you thought I was weak. No, Khloe, I just couldn't be bothered to argue. It wasn't that I couldn't fight back, it was that you weren't worth proving myself to. And now you want another chance? Too late, Julian. Her voice broke into sobs. I'm so sorry. I regret it all. You could fall to your knees and beg, and it wouldn't change a thing. Click. The line went dead. Khloe crumpled to the floor, clutching her phone. This time, the grief tearing through her wasn't an act. She had lost, utterly and completely. The next morning, Leo walked into the living room. Shredded papers littered the floor, and Khloe sat on the sofa, her eyes swollen from crying. He let out a sharp sigh. Did you call him? Did you beg? Khloe didn't answer. She just stared blankly into space. Leo sneered. You've got some nerve. He tosses you aside, and you go crawling back to him. Khloe's head finally turned. Her voice was hoarse but sharp. Shut up. What? Did I hit a nerve? Now you finally realize who the real man is. Wasn't it just a few months ago you told me I was your one and only? I was blind, she shot back bitterly. Leo slammed his hand on the table, fury flashing in his eyes. The only reason you're still here talking to me is because you've got nowhere else to go. Khloe's eyes burned with contempt. You're not even a tenth of the man he is. Leo lunged forward, his face twisted. You really want to see me walk out that door? Go, Khloe said coldly, standing to face him. Go ahead. You're nothing but a parasite. A joke who dreamed of being a king. You can't even support me. Who the hell do you think you are? Shut your mouth! Leo roared and struck her across the face. Khloe froze, her hand flying to her burning cheek. This was the man she had thrown everything away for. Her so-called knight in shining armor. She had once called Julian weak, but now the truth was clear. The real weakling, the most pathetic man of all, was the one she had chosen. Leo stormed out, slamming the door. Khloe was left in silence, her face stinging, her eyes hollow. She wanted to laugh, but no sound came. That evening, Julian sat at the head of a sleek conference table in his new office. His new assistant, sharp and poised, presented the second quarter investment strategy. Sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows as he listened, calm and steady. Miss Vance has been officially removed from the board of Vance Enterprises. She reported, the company has filed for bankruptcy restructuring. Leo Foster is under investigation for securities fraud and has been blacklisted by multiple institutions. Julian nodded faintly. Let them tear each other apart. The assistant hesitated. As for Khloe Vance, she was seen kneeling outside the company entrance today. Security captured video. Deleted, Julian said without looking up. Yes, sir. For a moment, he paused. Then, his voice quiet, almost weary, he added, she's not worth it. The assistant froze, then understood. This wasn't heartlessness. It was finality. Julian had cut the unworthy people from his life completely. At the same time, Khloe sat in the back of a taxi. Her clothes were stained with dust and rain. She had knelt outside that building for an hour, only to be handed a notice, unauthorized. Individuals are prohibited from entering. Her phone buzzed. An old, muted account had just posted. It was Julian. The photo was from the day of their divorce, the one of him shaking Leo's hand, grinning. The caption read, the best thing that ever happened to me was him taking her off my hands. Khloe stared at the post until her tears blurred the screen. That night, the Alien Club glittered under the warm evening sky. It was Port Sterling's most exclusive venue, and tonight it hosted the annual charity gala. The city's titans of business, politics, and entertainment arrived in sleek black cars, flashes exploding across the red carpet. Julian Shaw entered through a private entrance, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. At his side, his assistant, tall, elegant, radiating competence. Every head turned as he passed. Calm, composed, with only the faintest polite smile on his lips, he was the very image of control. The event host hurried forward. Mr. Shaw, it's an honor to have you with us. Julian nodded and was led to the central VIP table, the seat of honor. This gala wasn't just about philanthropy. It was a statement. And tonight, the statement was clear. The ceremony was an official anointment. A confirmation of one's place in the city's inner circle. Cameras flashed non-stop, all focused on Julian, their light catching him from every angle. On the edge of the crowd stood Khloe, watching intently. She wore a flawless white evening gown, her makeup perfectly done, yet inside she felt like an imposter. She had only managed to slip in by persuading an acquaintance to lend her a temporary press assistance pass. From the fringes of the Grand Hall, she stared at Julian, now the undeniable center of attention, a world she once commanded with ease. But tonight, she was separated from it by an invisible wall. Instinctively, she adjusted her dress, trying to gather the courage to move closer. When she finally took a step toward the VIP section, 2 security guards immediately blocked her path. Sorry, ma'am. This area is restricted. I know him. She whispered desperately. We know who you are, one of the guards replied. His tone wasn't unkind, but it was firm. You are not permitted entry. Khloe froze, her head bowing in shame. She was once his wife. Back then, a single word from him would have silenced the room, would have protected her from anyone and anything. Now, she couldn't even get close to him. From the shadows, she watched the man she had trampled on was now the star that everyone admired, but she wouldn't accept this. Gritting her teeth, she found a side entrance and slipped into the quieter backstage corridor reserved for VIPs. There, she spotted Julian deep in low-voiced conversation with a group of executives. Her throat dry, she forced herself to walk toward him. Julian. He turned at the sound of her voice, showing no surprise, almost as if he had expected her to appear. "Khloe," he said flatly. She drew in a deep breath. Can we talk?" Julian didn't answer right away. He simply looked at her for a few long seconds before speaking. "What is there left to talk about?" Khloe forced a small smile. "I know I was awful to you, and I know you're not the same person you used to be." "That's right," Julian nodded. "And you're not the same person you were either." Her eyes widened in shock. He continued, his voice sharp and calm. "You've become anxious, desperate, pathetic. You've even learned to swallow your pride. But unfortunately for you, I'm not interested." Tears welled in her eyes, her voice trembling. "Is there really no chance for us? Don't you know how much I used to love you?" Julian let out a laugh. "You think that was love?" "No, I was a habit. Just someone you were used to having around to take care of you. Like drinking water, flavorless, ordinary, familiar. But I've learned something since then. Plain water doesn't quench real thirst, and it doesn't deserve a place at the table." Khloe bit her lip until she tasted blood. "Then what do you want?" she pleaded. Julian looked at her, his tone perfectly steady. "The freedom I want no longer includes you." The words shattered her. She stood frozen as he turned and walked back into the crowd, instantly surrounded by admirers. He had once been her accessory. Now, she wasn't even worthy of being in his shadow. And he never looked back. Slowly, Khloe sank to the floor, wrapping her arms around herself. Only now did she truly realize what her freedom had cost her. She had thrown away the most valuable thing in her life, and she would never again be allowed into his world. There would be no one to turn off the lights for her, no one to bring her water, no one to bow his head in silent devotion. She had lost the man who had loved her the most, and that man had finally learned to love himself. That night, the sky was ink black. Julian sat alone in a wicker chair on his penthouse balcony, the city lights sprawling beneath him like a carpet. A glass of whiskey sat untouched by his side. His assistant approached and handed him a tablet. "Khloe has been completely removed from Vance Enterprises. Leo Foster's fraud case has been formalized and his assets are being frozen." Julian nodded, picking up his phone and glancing at a trending news story. "Fallen idol, Leo Foster, former socialite paramour, facing multiple fraud allegations." The next headline read, "Vance Enterprises CEO exits market, former glory fades." Julian smiled faintly and set the phone down. Once, those two names had haunted his nights, had made him swallow his anger and pride. Now, they felt like names of strangers, as if those 3 years of his life had never happened. "Will you be making a public statement?" his assistant asked softly. "About what?" Julian replied, eyes drifting toward the night sky. "They have nothing to do with me anymore." He picked up his phone again and opened Instagram. The screen showed a draft he had saved, a grainy photo a bystander had taken on the day of his divorce. In it, he was dressed casually, smiling as he shook Leo's hand outside the courthouse. The angle was imperfect, but the moment had been real. That had been the first time he'd felt truly, completely relieved. He hit post. The caption was simple. "The best thing that ever happened to me was him taking her off my hands." Within minutes, the post had dozens of likes. A friend commented, "The king is finally free." Another joked, "Nice handshake." "My turn next." Julian smiled but didn't reply. It was the first personal post he'd made in 3 years. Not to show off, not for revenge. It was a ritual, a final, definitive closing of a chapter. Meanwhile, in her rented apartment, Khloe sat staring at her phone. Someone in a group chat had sent her a screenshot of Julian's post. She clicked it open. In the photo, his smile wasn't forced. It wasn't the fake smile of a man pretending to be free. It was the genuine, unburdened smile of someone who had finally disentangled himself from her world. Her heart felt as if it were being shredded. For days, she had scrolled through her contacts, just hoping for a message from him, any small sign. Instead, she got this post. One sentence. A nail in the coffin of her last hope. She understood now. Julian was gone. He had walked away cleanly, without nostalgia. There would be no dramatic twist, no last-minute confession of love. Only a quiet, indifferent goodbye, leaving her and their history as the punchline of a joke. The door slammed open. Leo stormed in, fury etched on his face. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. "The whole city knows you knelt outside his office. You've made me a laughingstock." Khloe didn't even look at him. She just sat, eyes hollow. Leo raged on. "What are you now? A washed-up ex-wife he won't even acknowledge. Being with you is like holding a live grenade. Shut up." Khloe said coldly, "Shut up." Leo laughed, harsh and ugly. "You think you have the right to talk to me like that? I should have seen it sooner. You're useless. A lost cause with a heart colder than your face. Get out." Khloe shouted, her voice stripped of all arrogance. "You wanted a scapegoat? Then get the hell out of my house. You'll regret this," Leo snarled, clenching his fists. "The day I get back on my feet." Khloe let out a bitter laugh. "You think you're Julian? You think you're capable of a comeback? You're not even worthy of imitating his shadow." She yanked the door open. Leo stormed out, slamming it behind him. The room was finally quiet again. Khloe sat back down, her phone still glowing with Julian's post. She didn't know how many times she'd reread it, only that each time it cut deeper. She had lost the man who made her soup, who fought her battles, who silently carried her world. And with 3 years of contempt, she had bought herself one final moment, his back, walking away. From now on, she would never be allowed back into his life or his world. The night wind swept through the window, rustling the shredded contract pages on the floor. They flipped over one by one, silent judgment of her pride and her choices. She suddenly remembered the cruel words she had once thrown at him 3 years ago. "You're a loser. Besides kissing my feet, what else can you possibly do?" Now she had her answer. He could make it so she wasn't even worthy of kneeling before him again. Julian sat in the back of his car, the glittering skyline rushing past. "Mr. Shaw?" the driver asked. "No," Julian said quietly. "Drive by the old place." The driver didn't question him, simply made a U-turn. Soon, the car pulled up in front of the old apartment building where Julian had once lived as a kept man. He stepped out and gazed up at the window that had once been his. That place had once been the center of his world. The reason he compromised everything. Now, both the person and the feeling were gone. He smiled faintly, turned away, and got back in the car.